How to export and update SQL Server table data using Excel, step-by-step, part 2. Hello everyone, welcome back. In the first video that I did a couple of weeks ago I showed you the basic concept of how you can export data from SQL Server into Excel using ADO as the methodology in VBA. I showed you how you can do the export and handle the data at a row by row and cell or column by column level. And we wanted to do it that way because that gives us the ability to format the data and do things with the data as we export it. And also in today's episode, we're going to look at the basic concept of how to update the data back in SQL Server. In this video, we'll just focus on the very bare bones functionality or methodology to get that data updated. And then in future videos, I think the next episode we'll look at how to insert data and how to expand the capabilities that we want as far as offering a user-friendly and a more robust experience so that the Excel solution is more like a software application. So in the first video, I started off by introducing you to some programming concepts, and we will continue that practice today. I think the video may be a little shorter today, but I will show you a few concepts like error handling and basic formatting of data and a few other things. By the way, if you do enjoy the videos that I do and you find the material somewhat useful to you, I would really appreciate it if you can give me a thumbs up and click on the bell notification icon so that you get notified when I do publish new videos, and obviously also subscribe so that you don't miss out. Also, you can hop over to my website, Kudutek, kudutek.com. The link will be in the description of this video as well. And there you can also subscribe to my mailing list, and that way you will stay informed when I issue any new articles and tips and tricks and videos. And thank you for your support, really appreciate it. So without any further ado, let's just dive right into it. Alright everyone, so in the last video that we did, this was where we left it. We had the basic export functionality. We were able to export data from the persons table out of SQL Server through a SQL Server view. And now we are ready to take it to the next step and add some basic import and update capability. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get a new button, and we want to call that button import. And easiest way to do that is if we go to developer and design mode, we select our existing button, and you can do a Control-C and a Control-V, and that gives you the second button. Yep, you can right click and go to properties. And over here, we again want to change our name to command import. And for the caption, we want to change that to import and enter. We can close the properties. And now we have our import button. Now let's go into the code. So we double click on import, and it creates our new sub, which we call command import. The default is fine. And now we need to add some code to this. Before we continue with the import though, I do want to show you a couple of other concepts using the export code that we already have. Alright, so in the export sub, I just quickly want to do a couple of things. So first of all, I'm just going to limit the data that we return back to maybe just 100 records or so, just to make my testing quick and easy. And then I'm also going to just add something to the code to break it, because I want to introduce an error and show you what that will look like. So I'm just going to add some random letters in my SQL statement like that, double Q, and that will break it, and it will not successfully export the data. So let's see what that looks like. So go out of design mode, let's click on export, and this is the error that we get. It's not very user friendly, it just breaks, it stops right at the code. Now under programming or testing and development circumstances, this is useful, sometimes is a useful pop-up to receive. When you click on debug, it usually takes you more or less to the area in the code where the problem occurred. So we can see that the problem occurred when the statement tried to execute, but we're not quite sure, what exactly the problem is. So let's add some error handling to this. Now at this point, when the code does break like this, you can click on the that little stop or reset icon at the top there, just to make sure that the program has stopped. And you can see that we still have the hourglass running, or the cursor looks like an hourglass indicating that it's busy. And that hourglass was what we actually initiated over here when we started the process. So Excel wait was our hourglass. And now that the program stopped unexpectedly through an error, this hourglass does not get reset back to the default, which under normal circumstances we would do down here at the end on this line. So if we add some error code or error handling and try this again, that should give us a better experience. So let's just do that, and I'm just going to copy and paste a quick couple of lines. So for error handling, we start by adding this line at the top on error, go to error exit, where error exit in my case is my own label for my error handling section. And then at the bottom, at the end of your code, pretty much at the end of the sub, you put this line, exit sub. And then you add your error exit section underneath, like that. And I'm gonna just comment that out real quickly, and we'll come back to this. So here you can see if an error occurred somewhere in my code, it's going to exit the sub and enter the error section, error handling section, and over here we're going to set the cursor back to the default. And it should be a more user-friendly experience, because this is how you can intercept errors, and then you can let the application gracefully exit out of the error, and you have the ability to let the application continue in certain circumstances, depending on what you're trying to do. In this case, we are stopping, but we're stopping it gracefully. So let's go back to Excel and run this again. So notice still the hour cursor, because it hasn't been reset yet. We click export, and no error, nothing really happened, and the cursor got set back to the default. So now, as it is right now, the user wouldn't know that an error really occurred. They just wouldn't see anything happening here. So let's just go back into the code quickly. And you can communicate with your user by adding your own message box. So message box, and then a bit of a description error, and then the system error, you would pick that up and you would show this in this section in a more user-friendly way. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. Now we have a user-friendly, more intelligent error message, and it says incorrect syntax near the keyword top. Interesting. So let's go and check that out. So back in our code, we can see near the keyword top, that's our issue right there, the QQ. And I will save my work at this time. And say export. And now we just get our 100 records, as you can see on the status bar at the bottom. And so things are looking good. You may remember from the last video that we did that the data that we use to query out of SQL Server, it comes out of a view, and it's called the V salesperson view, which is based on a query that joins multiple tables. And some of that data comes out of the persons table, which is the alias P, which is this one, so person table. And then we have fields from other tables as well. So it's important when you try to update data in SQL Server, you need to know which destination tables or target tables you want to update. So just because you have all the data from these different tables showing nicely through the view, it's not to say it's as easy as that to just take that and update it in all the tables. We will eventually get there, but we want to focus on updating one specific table first. Our primary table in this context is the person table. So to make that easier and to help you plan out your code and logic that you need when you develop a new update procedure in Excel, what I did is the following. So I added sheet 2, and this is just for my information and for your information as a developer to help you plan this out a little better. So what I did here was I color coded and I marked the columns that belong to the person table in one color, and different fields that belong to different tables, each in their own color. That way it's easier to get organized and plan how you want to approach this. And in our case, we're going to focus on updating the person fields first. And then in upcoming videos, we will then look at how we can also update some of the other information. And there's also the concept of primary key and foreign key involved here, and we'll get to that also in upcoming videos. For the purpose of this video, a few things that you want to know beforehand is the columns. One thing that I do need to explain quickly, in the last video we had the data export on column A. I actually want the data to start in column D. So that means we want to reserve these three columns, the first three columns A, B, and C, for some other information. And I'll show you through the equipment maintenance utility that I did in my first video a couple of years ago. It looks like this. The first three columns I use to indicate status. So as we update the data, the status will tell us whether it was successful, whether it's validating, or whether it actually posts. The error message will show any errors that we get, and those could include data validation errors, user-friendly errors that we want to present the user with. And the post action usually shows us whether it's an insert or an update. So we want to do something similar in this one. So easiest way to do that is we want to come back into our code here, go into design mode, export. So we use the JOffset variable to make that easier in our code. That way it makes it easy to quickly make the adjustment in the code if you want to change where the output column needs to start. So we do that with the columns and also with our start row, which is I start row 8. So for the J offset, I'm going to set this to 4. And I'm also going to put this in a line of code down here where we clear the records. We want to set that to J offset plus. So it's just part of our clear logic that we did in the last video that clears out all the existing rows. So we just want to tell it to offset by 3 as well, so that it clears out all the columns for us. So if we now export again, all right, so that's looking good. We have the offset working and everything clears out correctly. We'll come back and add this in the next video. We'll probably start to add the status information. For now, let's just focus on the basic update logic. So I'll go back into design mode, import. Let's now start to add some code. So similarly to the export logic, we will add pretty much the same pieces of same variables and ADO objects. In the case of the import, we don't need the that one that we call the record set, because we don't plan to display anything that we're not pulling data out of SQL Server, we're just posting back. So we just need the connection and the command. I'm starting my error code at the top here. So we want to do something similar again to the to the export logic, where we want to add a section that looks like this, and we can just bring that back a little bit like that, and that should be good. All right. Also at this point, I just want to add these 2 lines of code to uninitialize my ADO objects at the end. So now if we go to import, nothing really happens yet, because we still need to add some more logic to this, including the SQL statement that's going to do the update for us. So at this point, let's just jump back quickly to our plan of action. So we said that we're going to focus on updating the person fields, and this is going to be the direct ones, so the ones that's directly in the person table. So where what we see and what it is in the person table correspond exactly. Other things like phone number or address, those will be foreign keys. So it's the address line itself is not in the person table. There's a foreign key that links to the address table in this case. So we will revisit that then in a future video. But for a basic update, let's just see how we will do it with these guys. Alright, so as we look at our data, let's just take one of these as an example. Let's just take this top one, the first record here, 2675. I'll just copy that, and let's go to SQL Server, and my silly little update statement here, I'll just change. So the business entity ID, that's the unique identifier for the person table. And so if you want to update a specific record in the person table, you will find it by using this business entity ID value and field. It's a key. So it's called the primary key, and in SQL tables, the primary key is usually your first column, and it's your unique identifier. So this only one record will have the 20675 value. If you try to add a second one with that same value, you will get an error. And SQL Server or other referential integrity databases will not allow you to do that. So let's update some of this information. Let's say the title, we want to make the title QW, first name Diana, last name Brown, and that should be good. So we'll just run this in SQL. And let me just point it to the AdventureWorks 2014 database, execute. Now, if we go to Excel again and we export again, notice how this will now change. Okay, so title QW, first name Diana, last name Brown. And so we pretty much want to accomplish the same thing from within VBA. So we want to create an update statement similar to the one that we just looked at in SQL Server, and we want to use variables that will contain these different values. So it will take it from the spreadsheet, put it in these different values or variables, and then we will build an update statement for each one of these records one by one, and we will take the values out of those variables, build the update statement, and then try to execute it. So let's see how that will work. So go back into the import sub down here. So the next thing that we want to do, and what I will copy and paste over quickly, is our column variables. And they will look like this. Alright, so these names pretty much will line up with what we have in as we lined it out here. So column D, starting position 0. So we start with 0. So that's 0 plus 4. The offset will be 4, which is column 4. So that's our starting point. 4, 5 up to 17. And the numeric position starting at 0 to 13. And that's column D to Q. So again, the ones that we will include in our update statement will be the light green ones. So I also color coded to make it easier for us and also for our users to see what they can update and what is for information purposes only. So the blue columns will be for information purposes only. You can alter them, but when you click import to update, it's not going to carry those over into the SQL Server table data. The green ones, though, they will be included in the update statement, and they are then updatable. So we want to focus it. So first of all, it's good practice to take all your variables, one for each one of the fields displayed in Excel, and assign them all to variables. And then you can just pick the ones that you do want to include in the update statement. So that being said, let's just look at the code. So we have our variables here. So just like we did in the export logic, we do need to assign our username and password, SQL Server information. We need to build the connection string and then establish the connection up to that point. And now we are ready to do a while loop and build the query. And to save a bit of time, I'll just paste everything in here and then I'll just talk through it quickly. All right. So using our offset variables, so we set I to the start row, we make the start row 9 instead of 8 like in the export it was 8 because we also on the row 8 we wanted to put the labels of the columns. For import purposes we want to start at 9 because we just need the data and the data starts in row 9. So the I start row, we set I to start row, so 9. And then the J offset starting at 4. So for the while loop, what we'll do is we will iterate through the first column, so column 4. So let's just look at the data real quickly. So we want to use this column, starting at this cell and step down. So we're going to say while the next one has a value, while the next one has a value, and it will step through and down until it reaches the first cell in this column that doesn't contain a value, and that's going to be more or less, row 100. So 108 because of the start row offset. So once the next cell is this one and it's empty, that's going to be the signal to the while loop to exit. So that's how we will know where to start and where to end the iteration of the records. You can obviously make it more sophisticated in your own solutions. This is just a basic demonstration of the easiest, simplest way to do that sort of thing. So back in our code, the next thing then would be to take those variables and assign them to the or have the cell values of the corresponding columns for row 9, because we started row 9, assigned to the variables that represent those different fields in the different tables. Now, in our case, we are just going to focus on these. That's all we have. That's direct visual fields that tie into the persons table that we can directly update without having to worry about foreign keys or other tables. So for my update statement, that's what I did. So as you can remember from the update statement, we do have a where clause, and the where clause has the business entity ID set to the unique identifier, and that in our case would be the first column, so column 4. And so we built a little where clause. So the string where variable contains our where clause, business entity ID equals, and then the value that's in that cell, this cell over here. So you can see how we did it. It sort of corresponds. I like to have consistency between how you plan things out and how you code it. So offset is position 4, column 4, and I add a 0 in front just to be consistent, even though the 0 doesn't do anything. It's just for the visual consistency. The next one would be then, that second column, or 1, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, plus the offsets to give you the appropriate position in your cells or columns. So we built the string where clause first, and then we have another string variable. We call that SQL query. That's going to contain the update statement. And then you can see it's pretty much how it was in the SQL code, but wrapped in the quotes and the syntax that we need in VBA to concatenate all these different pieces of string into the same variable string query. So we build it like that. In the SQL code, the string values need to be wrapped in single quotes. So that's why we have a single quote, and then we end that piece of the string, and then we have the ampersand, which is in VBA the symbol that we use to say take a string and then add another string value to it. So and then we take the contents of the variable and we add it to it, and then another and or ampersand, and then we start the next string piece there. So double quotes is how you indicate what's a string, and then in between those double quotes would be the the string itself. So single quote and a comma. And then when you have multiple lines that you need to concatenate in VBA, you do that with an ampersand followed by a space and an underscore like that. So you can see the last line doesn't have that because we don't have to concatenate or add anything after that. So that's how you build your update statement. Once you have your update statement, you execute it by assigning it to the command text in the ADO object. You set the connection and you then execute. And then we step on to the next row, so from row 9 to row 10 by using our variable I, and we increment it by 1. So it's going to continue through all the rows. For each one of those rows, it's going to build the update statement and it's then going to execute it. So let's see how that works. So I think we are ready to update something. Now I'm going to take the title of QW, I'm going to take that off. Maybe instead of having L for a middle name, I'll make it a full middle name. Let's just make it something like Leah. Or Lee, I guess. And Mrs. And let's see how that works. So out of design mode, click import, no errors. So theoretically, I'm just going to take those first few lines off. Remember the Lee and the Mrs. Should be there when we export again, right? So export, and there we have it. So that's the basic concept of how you update data using the ADO methodology through VBA, row by row. Now I know this is very basic. We have a lot of work to do to make this a really nice, elegant solution. But if you do it this way, it just gives you so much control to validate data before you allow an update. And if there's any issues, it may be data integrity kind of errors that you want to make more user friendly, but it could also be other things that you want to limit, like you just want to limit this maybe to allow for, Mrs. or Mr. And that sort of thing. So all of that sort of logic you can add in your VBA code. And then if they try to enter something else that's not acceptable as a title, you will have an error message that you can show here, and the user will know that they need to go and fix that before they can actually load the data back into SQL Server. Now, I do want to show you quickly a couple of formatting things and how you can use a macro in Excel to kind of find some ideas on how you can code in VBA, how to find out what the Excel object model, I guess they call it in VBA, would be, so that you can tap into the available methods and properties of the different pieces that you can manipulate through VBA. So on the export, let's say you want to alternate the colors of these rows. To make it a little easier on the eye, as you look at the data, especially when you have groups of data, maybe you have like a section that's all the same person, and you want to sort of color that one color, and then when the next group of records that belong to another person show after it, and maybe 3 records, that would be a different color, and then you alternate those colors, kind of like how the tables in Excel work. So sort of a similar way to format the data, just so that it's a little easier to look at. So to do that kind of thing, let's go back into our export code, and just to save some time, I'll just cut and paste or copy and paste a couple of pieces of code over again. Alright, so I added a little bit of code to accomplish the alternating colors for us. You don't have to understand this thoroughly, just trust me and use this as a code snippet whenever you want to accomplish the alternating thing. But I start off by setting my color index to XL none. XL none would be just a white line or no colored background line. Then just inside my while loop, I say my string current value is the value out of the first column of the ADO record set. I then have an if else statement, and I say if my current value is the same as the last value, then the color index is the color index. Otherwise, the color index is a nested if statement where we say if the color index is the same as XL none, then go with 15. Otherwise, go with XL none. So it just alternates color index, flip-flops as these values change. So in our data, the business entity ID changes on every record, so it's going to alternate on every record. If you wonder what kind of colors are available through the color index, you can do a quick search. If you go to Google and you go to Excel VBA color index, you'll see these different maps that's available, and so you can just quickly do a search and you'll see which colors correspond to which index values. And so in our case we used 15, which is that gray color over there. So that's one way. I'm also going to show you another way in a little bit. Alright, so one more thing that we need to do is we actually need to set the color of the cells or the rows as well. So in the J loop part, we need to add this code. So this actually then takes those cells that contain the values that we're outputting, and we set the color index to L color index, and that's how we just alternate. And so these two properties that we set, the color index and the pattern for the interior property. And I'm not going to go into too much detail what that means. I'll show you how you can quickly determine what that needs to be when you set values. So at this point, let's just do another export here. And there we go. Now you have the alternating colors. Now, there's one really cool thing about Excel on Windows. I don't think the Mac version of Excel has VBA in it, and probably not macros for that matter. I may be wrong, but I think that's the case. But in at least the Windows version of Excel, where you have the ability to record macros in Excel, it gives you a quick and easy way to cheat a little bit to find out how you would set different things in VBA in order to accomplish some of the things that you typically do through the front-end interface of Excel. So, that being said, let's take a quick look. So let's go to sheet 2 here for a minute. And if we want to determine how we can set the cells to have the background color that we see here, so this blue or this green, then how would you do that? Well, a very easy way to do that would be as follows. You can record a macro. So we click on record macro and just go with that default name. It's just a temporary macro that we are recording so that we can quickly cheat and see how we can get those color settings through VBA. So let's say we want to set this cell to blue and that cell under it to green. So I have that cell selected. Go to Home. I do my color drop down here, and I select that green, light green. I select the next column there. I change that color to blue, and I go back to my Developer tab, stop recording, go to Macros, and Macro 1 is what I'm looking for. And to see the code behind Macro 1, just select it and then go to Edit. And here you can see exactly what properties need to be set in VBA in order to set the green and in order to set the blue. And the width statement is another programming concept in VBA that you will also find in most other programming languages. And the width, what that means is if you start this with the keyword width, selection interior, then that means you save yourself having to type selection.interior on each one of these lines. Because within the width section, VBA knows that these properties all belong under the selection interior property, if that makes sense. All right, so I already have a little bit of code again in my sample code that I'll just copy and paste. But this is how you can determine using macros exactly how to set certain properties in VBA to get the exact colors that you want. because some of those colors are not available through the color index thing that I showed you in the previous bit of code that we just did. So let me just go back to my import code, my export code, and let's add another section of code, because what I want to do now is actually, let's copy this first and put this on sheet 1 over there, maybe like so. And this is just for the user and for yourself, just a color key that tells us we're going to color these columns, kind of like I did in the equipment utility. And I'm going to mark the ones that we can edit as green and the ones that we cannot edit at this point. That's just for information purposes as blue. That way it's pretty clear as a user wants to update data, what's available to update and what's not. So we want to make this dynamic and put it in the code so that we have control over that and update that as we continue to add more update functionality or expansion of what can be updated. So let's just go back into export, and down in the section where we set the labels to bold, where did we do that? Over here. Around this section, we also want to add the additional color coding piece. And let me just copy and paste that again out of my code. All right. So what I did here was I used a with statement again. Inside my with statement, I take my fields, the list, the ones that I know that need to, be green. In other words, the updatable ones. They are fewer fields to deal with than the ones that that will remain unchanged or blue. So it's easier to take my shorter list and just identify them by field name. And I say, in my ADO fields, if they have any of these names, then set them to that color green that we recorded through the macro. Otherwise, set it to the color blue. So let's see how that works. So let's do an export and see. There we go. So now we have our columns formatted in a user-friendly manner. It's color key coded, so we know what it means. The business entity ID is not something that we can update at this point because we're only focusing on updating data, and we use the business entity ID as the unique identifier. We will look at inserts in the next video, and then continue to add some more data validation and other functionality to this. So we'll continue to make this more and more user-friendly and more sophisticated. There's many concepts to share with you, and I have to admit I'm a little tired today, and you can probably tell that by just the way I present. But bear with me, and I will also show or share the code that I've done up to this point in my website, so you'll be able to go to I'll put some links in the description, and you'll be able to go and look at that code and copy and paste it into your own spreadsheet if you want to try it out. So that's it for this video and for the basic update logic. If you like the video, again, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate that. Please do subscribe if you haven't yet. That way you will stay informed whenever I publish a new video or issue any updates on Excel related tips and tricks and information. And let me know if you have any questions about anything that I did in this video or any of the previous videos. Leave some comments below, in the comment section of this video on the YouTube channel, of course. If you watch the videos from my kudutac.com website, you probably wouldn't, be able to leave comments. But simply click on that subscribe button, and that will take you to my YouTube channel, and you can, look up this video, and then there you'll be able to leave comments, and thumbs up and that sort of thing. And other than that, I appreciate your support, and I'm looking forward to sharing my next video with you. And I'm probably also going to add another video very soon that will focus on dynamic, so dynamic named ranges, which is a pretty cool thing that you can do in Excel. All right, have a good day and enjoy your weekend.